Most people will never be dangerous. Not dangerous in the way the world fears. Not dangerous in the way that makes rooms go quiet when you walk in. Not dangerous in the way that makes enemies rethink their moves before they even make them. They'll spend their entire lives reacting, chasing, pleading, hoping someone gives them a seat at the table. And they'll call that living. But you're here, which means something in you already knows that's not enough. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince for the weak. He wrote it for those rare few who are willing to see the world as it actually is, not as they wish it were. Cold, calculated, governed not by fairness, but by power. The untouchable man is not born. He is built, forged in silence, sharpened by discipline, tempered by detachment. And the process begins with one brutal truth: you are distracted. And distraction is making you weak. Every notification, every argument you entertained, every person whose opinion you allowed to live rent-free in your head, all of it is stealing from you. All of it is chipping away at the version of you that could have been feared. That version of you doesn't chase attention. He doesn't beg for approval. He doesn't explain himself. He moves in silence and lets his results detonate like a bomb. Drop dangerous focus in the comments right now, because what comes next will rewire how you operate forever. Number 2, the architecture of focus. Understand something most men will never admit. Focus is not a habit. Focus is not a morning routine. Focus is not a productivity hack you find in a self-help book written by someone who has never truly suffered, never truly sacrificed, never truly sat alone in darkness and chosen to keep building anyway. Focus is a weapon, and like every weapon, it must be forged, maintained, and wielded with cold intention. Machiavelli understood that the man who controls his attention controls his destiny, because attention is the currency of the mind. Where you spend it determines what you build. Where you waste it determines what destroys you. Most men scatter their attention like beggars throwing coins, a little here, a little there, wondering why they never accumulate anything worth having. They give their focus to people who don't deserve it, to arguments that don't serve them, to distractions that were deliberately engineered to keep them small, keep them consuming, keep them dependent. The untouchable man operates differently. He treats his attention like a sniper treats his ammunition, deliberately, precisely, and never without purpose. He decides before the day begins where his mental energy will go. He builds walls around his working hours that no person, no notification, no emotional disturbance can breach. He understands that every time he allows something unworthy to capture his attention, he is handing over a piece of his power. And a man who gives away his power in pieces will one day find himself with nothing left. This is where discipline enters. Not the soft, motivational poster version of discipline. Real discipline. The kind that operates when motivation is dead, when the environment is hostile, when every weak part of you is screaming to stop. That discipline is built through one thing only: repeated refusal. Refusing comfort, refusing distraction, refusing the slow poison of mediocrity dressed up as relaxation. You want to become untouchable? Then guard your focus like it is the most valuable thing you own. Because it is. Number 3, the power of detachment. Now we enter the territory most men are too afraid to explore. Detachment. Not indifference, not coldness for the sake of cruelty, but the deliberate, disciplined severing of your emotional dependency on outcomes, on people, on validation, on anything external that has been quietly holding your power hostage without you even realizing it. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. He said, "The man who depends on others for his strength will always be vulnerable." Always. Because anything you need, someone can take. Anything you crave, someone can weaponize against you. The moment people sense your attachment to their approval, to a specific outcome, to a relationship, to a result, they have found your weakness. And in a world governed by power, weakness is an invitation. It tells the world exactly where to strike. The untouchable man has no such invitation. He operates from a position of radical internal sufficiency. He wants things, deeply, intensely, but he does not need them. That single distinction is the difference between a man who can be manipulated and a man who cannot be touched. When you need nothing from the outside world to feel complete, the outside world loses all leverage over you. No one can threaten what you don't depend on. No one can seduce you with what you've already released. This is not emptiness. This is architecture. You are not removing desire. You are removing desperation. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming unbreakable. There is a profound difference between a man who is numb and a man who is grounded. Numbness is weakness dressed as strength. Groundedness is the real thing, calm, immovable, dangerous in its stillness. Practice detachment from praise. Practice detachment from criticism. Practice detachment from the need to be understood, to be liked, to be chosen. Do the work whether or not anyone is watching. Build in silence. Move without announcement. Drop iron detachment in the comments right now. Because the man who masters this becomes impossible to control and impossible to stop. Number 4. Discipline as identity. Let me tell you what separates the man who talks about power from the man who actually possesses it. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even strategy. It is discipline, but not discipline as an action. Discipline as an identity. Discipline so deeply embedded into the architecture of who you are that breaking it feels like betraying yourself. That is the level we are building toward. That is the threshold most men never cross, because they treat discipline like a tool they pick up when motivated and put down when uncomfortable. That approach will never produce an untouchable man. It will only produce a man who is occasionally impressive and permanently inconsistent. Machiavelli understood that the prince who rules himself first will always be more dangerous than the prince who only rules others. Self-mastery is the foundation of all external power. Every empire ever built, every legacy ever carved into history, every man who ever made the world bend to his will, began not with domination of others, but with absolute, ruthless domination of himself, his impulses, his fears, his appetite for comfort, his addiction to approval. He conquered the internal battlefield first. And that internal victory is what made every external victory possible. Real discipline means you show up when you feel nothing. You execute when the environment gives you every reason to quit. You maintain your standards when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when the results are not yet visible, and faith in the process is the only thing keeping you moving. That is not motivation. Motivation is a guest that visits occasionally and leaves without warning. Discipline is the permanent resident. It does not negotiate. It does not take days off. It does not care about your mood, your circumstances, your excuses, or your feelings. It simply demands that you perform, and it rewards those who comply with a version of themselves that the undisciplined world cannot compete with. Here is what nobody tells you about discipline at this level. It begins to feel like armor. Every day you choose it over comfort, you add another layer. Every time you refuse to quit, you reinforce a belief in yourself that no external validation can create and no external attack can destroy. You stop needing people to believe in you because you have built an unshakable belief in yourself through evidence, through action, through the daily accumulation of kept promises to yourself. That is identity-level discipline. That is what makes a man genuinely dangerous. Not his aggression, not his words, but the quiet, immovable certainty that he will not stop, that he cannot be broken, that he has already decided, and decisions at that level are permanent. Become that man. Start today. Start now. Number 5. The silent strategy. There is a weapon so powerful, so devastatingly effective, that most men walk past it every single day without ever picking it up. It costs nothing. It requires no physical strength. It demands no special intelligence. Yet it has toppled empires, dismantled enemies, and elevated ordinary men into figures of legend. That weapon is silence. And in a world addicted to noise, the man who masters silence becomes something the world has no framework to understand, and therefore no ability to control. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does not reveal all that he knows, all that he feels, or all that he plans. He understood something that the loud, the reactive, and the emotionally transparent will never grasp. That information is power, and every word you speak unnecessarily is power being surrendered. Every time you explain yourself without being asked, you are handing your enemy a map. Every time you react emotionally in public, you are showing the world exactly which buttons to press. Every time you announce your plans before they are complete, you are inviting interference, competition, and the subtle sabotage of people who smile at your face and resent your progress in private. The untouchable man speaks with precision and purpose. He does not fill silence with noise, because silence makes him uncomfortable. He has trained himself to sit inside silence the way a predator sits inside stillness, patient, aware, conserving energy, waiting. He understands that the man who speaks least in a room is often the man being studied most. There is a gravitational pull to controlled silence. It signals depth. It signals security. It signals that this man has no need to perform for your approval. No need to fill every gap in conversation with the sound of his own voice. No desperate hunger to be seen or heard or validated. That signal alone repositions you in every room you enter. But the silent strategy goes deeper than just speaking less. It means withholding your reactions. It means refusing to give people the emotional feedback they are fishing for when they test you, provoke you, or attempt to destabilize you. When someone expects anger and receives calm, they are disarmed. When someone expects defensiveness and receives stillness, they are confused. Confusion in your enemy is one of the most powerful positions you can create. An enemy who cannot read you is an enemy who cannot predict you. An enemy who cannot predict you is an enemy who cannot prepare for you. And an enemy who cannot prepare for you has already lost. Practice this. When something provokes you, pause. When someone disrespects you, go quiet. Not because you are weak, not because you are afraid, but because you are calculated, because you understand that the response you give in the heat of emotion will always be inferior to the response you deliver from a position of cold, composed power. Let them interpret your silence. Let them fill the void with their own anxiety. Let them wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning, what you are capable of. That wondering is control. That uncertainty is dominance. Drop silent power in the comments right now. Because the man who controls his tongue controls the room, and the man who controls the room controls the outcome. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is loaded. Number 6. Emotional invincibility. This is the section that will separate the men who are merely disciplined from the men who become truly untouchable. Because focus can be trained. Discipline can be built. Silence can be practiced. But emotional invincibility, the ability to remain psychologically immovable while the world around you burns, pressures, manipulates, and attempts to destabilize everything you have built, that is the rarest quality a man can possess. And it is the quality that every truly powerful figure in history has carried as his most lethal weapon. Understand this clearly. The world will test your emotions before it tests anything else. Before it tests your intelligence. Before it tests your strategy. Before it tests your strength. It will come for your emotional stability first, because that is the fastest route to your compliance, your surrender, your collapse. People, circumstances, failures, betrayals, they all arrive at the door of your emotions first. And if that door swings open easily, if you are the kind of man who can be destabilized by a comment, a setback, a rejection, or a betrayal, then you are not untouchable. You are a liability to yourself. You are a target, wearing the costume of a man. Machiavelli studied power with surgical precision, and what he observed was devastating in its clarity. The men who fell, the rulers, the commanders, the strategists, rarely fell because their enemies were smarter. They fell because their enemies found the emotional crack and exploited it without mercy. Pride, jealousy, the need for love, the fear of humiliation. These were not weaknesses of the mind, they were weaknesses of unguarded emotion. And once an enemy locates that crack, he does not attack it once, he returns to it repeatedly, pressing harder each time, until the structure collapses from the inside. The untouchable man has sealed those cracks. Not by suppressing emotion, suppression is a temporary wall that eventually explodes, but by processing emotion with ruthless honesty in private, extracting the intelligence from it, and then releasing it before it becomes a liability in public. He feels everything, the anger, the pain, the disappointment, but he refuses to be governed by any of it. He uses emotion as data, not as direction. He asks what this feeling is telling him, extracts the strategic information, and then makes his move from a place of cold clarity rather than hot reaction. This is emotional invincibility. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the absolute mastery of how feeling translates into behavior. The invincible man cries in private and walks into the room composed. He rages in solitude and sits across from his enemy calm. He grieves in silence and continues building without missing a single day. The outside world sees only the surface, steady, unreadable, dangerously composed. They have no idea what fires burn underneath because he has built a wall between his internal world and his external presentation that nothing can breach. And here is the dark truth about emotional invincibility that nobody in the self-improvement world wants to say out loud. When people cannot destabilize you emotionally, they become afraid of you. Not because you are aggressive, not because you are loud, but because they have run out of tools. Every manipulation tactic in human psychology relies on emotional vulnerability as its entry point. Remove that entry point, and the manipulator stands in front of you completely disarmed, completely exposed, realizing with quiet terror that they have no power here. That realization changes the dynamic of every relationship, every negotiation, every confrontation in your favor, permanently. You want to be untouchable? Guard your emotional state like it is the throne room of your empire. Let no one enter uninvited. Let no chaos sit at your table. Let no person's behavior determine the weather inside your mind. Drop emotionally invincible in the comments right now, because the man who owns his emotions owns the room, owns the outcome, and ultimately owns his destiny. Number 7. The dark power of absence. Most men are obsessed with presence. They want to be seen, heard, acknowledged, included. They believe that visibility equals value. They believe that the more they show up, the more they speak, the more they insert themselves into every conversation and every situation, the more powerful they become. And this belief is one of the most expensive mistakes a man can make. Because in the architecture of real power, it is not your presence that creates your value. It is your absence. And the man who learns to weaponize his absence becomes something the world cannot stop thinking about, even when he is nowhere in the room. Machiavelli understood the psychology of scarcity better than almost any thinker in history. He observed that men desire most what they cannot easily access, that the ruler who is always available is never truly respected, that the advisor who speaks at every occasion is eventually tuned out, that the man who withholds himself strategically who appears, makes his mark, and then withdraws, commands a level of attention and speculation that constant presence could never manufacture. Absence, wielded deliberately, is one of the most psychologically sophisticated power moves available to a man who understands human nature at its deepest level. Think about what happens in the mind of someone when you suddenly go quiet. When you stop explaining yourself. When you stop checking in, stop seeking, stop making yourself conveniently available to everyone who demands a piece of your time and energy. Their mind fills the void with questions. Where is he? What is he building? What does he know that I don't? What is he becoming while I'm standing here waiting for his attention? That psychological vacuum you create by withdrawing is not emptiness, it is influence. It is the invisible hand that keeps people oriented toward you, even in your absence. It is the gravitational pull of the man who has mastered the art of being wanted without begging to be needed. But understand this: strategic absence only works when it is backed by substance. A man who disappears and produces nothing during his silence is not mysterious, he is irrelevant. The power of absence is amplified by what you return with. The silence must be filled privately with building, with sharpening, with becoming. When you reappear, and you do so on your terms, at your chosen moment, you must return with something that justifies the wait. A result, a transformation, a level of capability that makes the world realize you were not absent because you were lost. You were absent because you were becoming dangerous. This is the dark power of absence, applied to relationships, to business, to every social dynamic you navigate. Stop being the man who is always available. Stop responding instantly to everyone who reaches for your attention. Stop showing up to every situation that calls your name. Begin selecting deliberately where you go, who receives your time, which conversations are worthy of your voice. That selectivity will confuse people at first. They will push, they will test, they will attempt to guilt you back into availability. Hold the line, because what they are experiencing in that discomfort is the recalibration of how they value you. And that recalibration always, without exception, moves in your favor when you refuse to collapse back into over-availability. The untouchable man is not everywhere. He is somewhere specific, doing something specific, becoming something specific. And the world knows it. Even when they cannot see him, even when they cannot reach him, even when days pass without a word from him, his presence is felt more powerfully in his absence than most men's presence is felt when they are standing directly in front of you. That is the dark power of absence. That is the psychological weapon of the man who has truly mastered scarcity. Become rare. Become selective. Become the man the world cannot stop thinking about, even when you give them nothing to think about. Because silence and absence, combined, are the loudest statement a powerful man can make. Number 8. Rebuilding in the dark. There is a chapter in every powerful man's life that he never posts about, never announces, never performs for an audience. A chapter with no applause, no validation, no external confirmation that what he is doing is working, or that who he is becoming is worth the cost. A chapter so dark, so isolating, so brutally honest in what it demands from him that most men who enter it never finish it. They retreat. They seek comfort. They choose the familiar warmth of mediocrity over the cold, demanding silence of transformation. And that retreat is the moment they permanently disqualify themselves from the life they claim to want. But you are not most men. And this section is for the version of you that is currently in that chapter, or will be soon. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who has never known adversity has never truly been tested, and the man who has never been tested cannot be trusted with real power, because power without trial is fragile. It shatters the moment real pressure arrives. The man who has only ever operated in favorable conditions is one storm away from collapse. But the man who has built in darkness, who has continued to move, to plan, to sharpen himself during periods of loss, betrayal, failure, and isolation, that man carries a different kind of strength, a kind that cannot be manufactured in comfort, a kind that can only be forged in the specific heat of difficulty, endured without surrender. Rebuilding in the dark means continuing when the results are invisible. It means executing your discipline on the days when you feel completely broken. It means maintaining your standards when your environment is chaotic, when your resources are limited, when the people around you have either abandoned you or are actively working against you. It means choosing the long game at the exact moment when the long game feels most impossible, most unreasonable, most cruel in what it is asking you to sacrifice. That choice, made repeatedly, in private, with no audience, is what builds the foundation that no external force can shake. Understand what darkness does to a man who refuses to quit inside it. It strips away everything that is not essential. The fake relationships reveal themselves. The false ambitions fall away. The superficial desires lose their grip. What remains after darkness has done its work is pure. It is the irreducible core of who you actually are, what you actually want, and what you are genuinely capable of when stripped of every comfort and convenience you were using as a crutch, without realizing it. Darkness is not punishment. Darkness is clarification. It is the most honest environment a man will ever operate in, because it removes every illusion and forces him to confront the raw truth of his character. The men who emerge from genuine darkness are different in ways that are immediately visible to anyone paying attention. There is a stillness in them that was not there before, a groundedness, a quiet certainty that does not need to announce itself because it is already evident in how they carry themselves, how they speak, how they make decisions, how they respond to pressure. They have been tested at the level that most men never reach, and they did not break. That survival, that refusal to collapse, writes itself permanently into their identity. It becomes the bedrock of an unshakable self-belief that no future adversity can fully erode. So if you are in the dark right now, if you are in the chapter with no applause, no visible results, no one around who understands what you are building or why you are sacrificing what you are sacrificing, hear this clearly. You are not losing. You are being constructed. Every day you continue in that darkness is a day the man you are becoming grows stronger, sharper, more dangerous, more capable, more untouchable than the version of you that existed before the darkness arrived. Do not rush the process. Do not beg for the lights to come back on before the work is done. Stay in it. Build in it. Become in it. Drop built-in darkness in the comments right now. Let me know you are in the process. Let me know you understand that the dark chapter is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your most dangerous version. Number 9. The untouchable mindset. Everything we have covered until this point, the focus, the detachment, the discipline, the silence, the emotional invincibility, the power of absence, the willingness to rebuild in darkness, all of it converges here. All of it feeds into this single, final architecture of the mind that separates the man who is merely strong from the man who is genuinely untouchable. Because untouchability is not a collection of habits. It is not a checklist of behaviors you perform when you remember to. It is a mindset, a complete and total reorientation of how you see yourself, how you see the world, and how you position yourself within it. And once this mindset is fully installed, once it becomes the operating system through which you process every experience, every challenge, every relationship, every opportunity, nothing external can reach you in the way it once did. Machiavelli's most profound insight was not about strategy or politics or the mechanics of power. His deepest insight was about the interior world of the powerful man. He observed that the truly formidable figures of history were not those with the most resources or the most allies. They were those whose internal world was so ordered, so disciplined, so completely under their own governance, that external chaos could not find a foothold inside them. They had built a mental fortress, not a wall that kept the world out in fear, but a structure so solid, so deliberately architected from the inside, that the world's attempts to destabilize it simply had nowhere to land. The untouchable mindset begins with a decision that most men are too comfortable to make. The decision that you are solely responsible for everything in your life, your results, your emotions, your responses, your trajectory. No blame, no victimhood, no transferring of your power to circumstances or people or systems that wronged you. Total ownership. Brutal, uncompromising, liberating ownership of your reality. Because the moment you stop looking outward for the cause of your condition, you reclaim the power to change it. And a man in full possession of his own power is a man the world cannot manipulate, cannot redirect, and cannot stop. The untouchable mindset means you compete with no one but the man you were yesterday. You are not watching what others are building. You are not measuring your progress against timelines that were never yours. You are locked into your own lane with a focus so narrow and so intense that the noise of comparison, envy, and external judgment simply cannot penetrate it. Other men's success does not threaten you. Other men's opinions do not move you. Other men's timelines do not pressure you. You operate on your own clock, in your own direction, by your own standard. And that standard is set higher than anything the outside world would dare demand of you. This mindset transforms how you absorb failure. The untouchable man does not experience failure as identity. He experiences it as intelligence. Every loss is a lesson extracted with surgical precision and immediately applied. Every setback is a recalibration, not a collapse. Every rejection is redirection towards something more aligned with the trajectory he is on. He wastes nothing, not his time, not his pain, not his mistakes. Everything is fuel. Everything is data. Everything is construction material for the version of himself that is still being built. This is the mindset that makes you genuinely dangerous to every obstacle, every enemy, and every limitation that stands between you and the life you are building. Not dangerous through aggression, but through absolute, unshakable, quietly terrifying commitment to your own becoming. Install this mindset. Live inside it. Defend it daily like your power depends on it, because it does. Number 10, the final command. We have reached the end, but understand, this is not a conclusion. This is a commencement. Everything covered in this monologue was not information designed to be consumed and forgotten like every other piece of content competing for your attention in a world built to keep you distracted, dependent, and deliberately small. This was a blueprint. A cold, precise, uncompromising blueprint for the construction of a man the world cannot touch, cannot predict, cannot manipulate, and cannot stop. And blueprints are worthless without execution. So the only question that remains, the only question that has ever mattered, is what you do the moment this ends. Machiavelli's final lesson was perhaps his most ruthless. He said that the distance between the man who knows and the man who acts is where most men die, not physically, but in every way that matters. They die in potential never activated, in power never claimed, in the version of themselves that existed as a possibility but never made the transition into reality, because knowing felt close enough to doing, and comfort felt close enough to progress. Do not be that man. That man is everywhere. That man is the majority. And the majority, as Machiavelli understood with devastating clarity, never inherit power. They simply watch it from a distance and call it luck when someone else claims it. You now carry something most men walking this earth do not possess. You carry the framework. The cold, Machiavellian, psychologically precise framework for building focus that cannot be broken, detachment that cannot be exploited, discipline that cannot be negotiated with, silence that speaks louder than noise, emotional invincibility that disarms every manipulator, absence that creates, irresistible gravitational pull, darkness that forges rather than destroys, and a mindset so locked, so grounded, so ferociously committed to your own becoming that the world has no weapon powerful enough to stop your trajectory. But carrying a framework means nothing if you treat it like a trophy. Most men collect insights the way others collect possessions, proudly, passively, without ever putting them to use. They watch videos like this one, feel the fire ignite somewhere deep in their chest, and then walk back into the same patterns, the same distractions, the same conversations, the same version of themselves that existed before the fire was lit. And slowly, quietly, without even noticing, the fire dies. Not because it was weak, but because it was never fed with action. Insight without action is the most expensive form of self-deception available to a man. It gives you the feeling of progress while delivering none of the results. So feed the fire. Today. Immediately. With one decision, one boundary, 1 hour of focused work, one silence maintained where noise would have been the easier choice. Start so small, it feels almost insulting to your ambition, and then build from there with the consistency of a man who has already decided that stopping is not an option. The framework only activates through one thing: action. Daily, relentless, unannounced action taken in the direction of the man you have decided to become. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions improve. Not when motivation arrives like a welcomed guest. Now. Today. In this moment, with whatever you have, from wherever you are. The untouchable man does not wait for permission. He does not wait for perfect conditions. He moves, and the world rearranges itself around his momentum. This is your final command. Go silent. Go focused. Go build the version of yourself that makes everything you once feared completely irrelevant. Let your results be your announcement. Let your transformation be your loudest statement. Let the world wonder what happened to the man they thought they knew, and let the answer be visible in everything you become. Drop "I am untouchable" in the comments right now. Claim it, own it. Let every person watching this channel know that you have made the decision. Let that comment be the first act of the man you are becoming. Public, committed, irreversible. And if this monologue reached something deep inside you, if it lit something in you that refuses to go back to sleep, then hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications. Because what is coming next will go even deeper. The prince who stops learning, stops winning. The man who stops building, stops becoming. And you are just getting started.